Amanda is an aquatic botanist. She's the owner of Pondweed Pursuits, LLC. And she specializes in locating and identifying freshwater aquatic plants. She started the business in 2022 after spending 10 years in the lake management industry. She actually was the one, when she was working for Solitude Lake Management, who was basically the only game in town back then, because they bought up all the other companies that did this kind of work. When I went to get bids on doing our 2021 study, it was the only choice. Luckily, Amanda, who I had a great time working with when she did the project back in 2021, has spun off her own business now and is doing it on her own. So she's going to talk about the survey that we've contracted her to do later this year. And so, Keith was talking about the budget. We'll actually end this year slightly under next year after we pay Amanda for what, the project she's going to do that she's going to talk about now. All right, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Am I loud enough here? Yep. Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Amanda. I own Pondweed Pursuits. I started my business in 22 when I had my first child. I just wanted to do it on my own without somebody else telling me what to do. I really enjoy this work, and I wanted to help anyone I could. I grew up on a lake myself, and so I was you. My parents still live on that lake, and I know how important it is to protect your most loved resource. And I love plants, so it helps. I wanted to do it on my own. I met Jim a few years ago with Solitude, and I enjoyed the survey. I remember some of it. I remember seeing the common raid that we talked about earlier. But this year, I'm going to be doing what's called a point intercept survey on Sunset Lake. Now, this is a very specific, very data-driven type of survey, and I begin the process on ArcGIS, where I create a 10-meter grid, and I place points along that grid depending on the bathymetry of the lake. So I overlaid the bathymetry from ArcGIS, laid the grid on it, and chose the data points along the grid within the littoral zone. The littoral zone of the lake is the depth at which sunlight can reach the bottom, which is where the plants are going to grow. Typically, the standard is 20 feet, though that all depends on clarity. I see generally 15 to 18 feet. So I chose points according to the bathymetry of the lake, and you will see me boating around the lake, throwing my throw rake that I have at my table here. Don't get freaked out. I'm not trying to collect anything off the bottom except the plants. But yeah, I will get into your shoreline. I will get into your swimming area. Don't worry about it. Give me a wave. And so each of these dots here is a data point, and I collect several things. One, depth. I collect the plants that I see, and I speciate out each plant that I collect on my rake. And then I will assign an abundance to that plant, dense, moderate, sparse, trace, and I'll also take into account what I see around me in my boat. So I'm trying to collect whatever I can see, whatever I get on my rope. And I do biovolume, which is the height of the plant in the water column. So I take that into account. Overall cover. So I look around my boat and I see, okay, what's the plant coverage like? Can I see plants at the surface? If I can't see plants at the surface, then I just collect an overall cover based on what I collect on my rake. And then if I happen to see an invasive plant, then I collect in abundance for that plant as well. So this report that I'm going to be developing after my survey is going to be very data driven. and it's going to come up with all of the plants that you have in the lake. Now, this type of survey is really good for repeating year after year because I can go back to these points. I can repeat them. And with that, you can see trends and patterns over time. So I can see where plant assemblages fall, where they grow. If there was an invasive here, did it spread to another area? I can see densities, where densities have fallen, where depth has fallen and grown each survey year. So I try to do the survey at generally the same time every year. So it's a very data intensive survey. Great choice by Jim and the association. I do several different types of surveys too. I do rare plant surveys in case if you're trying to do an herbicide application and you have a rare plant in your lake and the state needs a survey to find that rare plant, I also do those as well. I do littoral surveys where I just at random drive the shoreline, throw rake wherever I feel like throwing it or wherever I see plants. That one is typically not as repeatable, but that's the most standard survey that you see that are used. They're often the cheapest because the report's very small. There's not much data to it. But I do several different kinds. There's transect surveys too, where I'll take GPS points in lines. That one's not as common, but do you have any questions?
You mentioned yearly, but then I heard something about 5 years. Are you?
Yeah, it can be repeated in that 5-year span, and I can.
Will it be?
Yes.
I don't know. And if I am not the consultant you want to use in 5 years, I can provide the shape file to the association, and you can give that to the next consultant, and they can then repeat that. So it's very universal.
5 years sounds like a long time. Is there a lot that can happen in 5 years?
That's not really for me to speak on,
All right.
but of course.
All right.
Of course.
All right.
An invasive plant can come in and grow pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that's yeah.
It's very nuanced.
I get it. Okay.
What percentage of the lake is covered with foliage? In the bottom?
I'm not sure at this point.
She'll know after she does the survey.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of all these invasive things that you're finding?
If I find it in Sunset, typically herbicide applications, if the association is open to that, you can hand pull it. If especially if it's a new population and it's really small, you can hand pull them and control them that way.
Which we've done. Jim can speak to that, right, Jim?
Yeah.
So we haven't had any invasive aquatic plant species, so we haven't had to deal with that. Those are actually much more difficult to deal with. We have 2 shoreline invasives. So we have purple loosestrife, which I talked about earlier, which is this beautiful purple plant that people love, but it's an invasive that spreads everywhere. And then we have this thing called common reed, also known as phragmites. And those are, we had a patch that was probably 8 times the size of this table. And Amanda was the one that discovered it. We had no idea what common reed looked like. And when she did the survey in 2021, she actually discovered 3 spots of it on the lake, this big patch of it, which was at the end of Blue Heron Road. And then there were 2 other patches that she found, and what I discovered what it looked like, I found another one later. So the common reed, the small patches, we've been pulling it out. That's the same thing that we do with the purple loosestrife, as you dig and pull it out. They're very small. But this huge patch that we had, we would have to get an expensive permit, and the permits would be similar to the dredging permit that the town had to get. It's based on the calculation of the area that you're dredging to dig it out. So I looked through all the NHDES laws, and I found this little loophole, whereas if you work with the expert at NHDES and get permission to cover it, you can smother it out. And that's what I did. We did that, it was in 2021, so it's been 4 years now, and it's almost completely gone. I think it will be complete, that patch will be completely gone next year. The other 2 patches we hand pulled, 2 of the 3 are gone. One of them is in the middle of a poison ivy patch. So that one's a little more difficult. There's only about 3 plants there, so we're just, go in there and cut them as we can. Not exactly sure. We'll keep an eye on those, for spreading. And then in answer to Nick's question, what we do, we have volunteers on the lake that are weed watchers, so we go out looking for weeds as well, to make sure that we're not seeing anything. Invasives, when they get there, they spread pretty quickly and they're pretty noticeable, so we think we'd be able to spot one in that interim, 5-year time period. But we're building up an account now. We could do it more often. And Amanda's pricing, don't tell her this, but it's very reasonable. We're paying the same price that we paid when she worked at Solitude to do a littoral zone, which is just, as she said, she throws the rake where she sees stuff or feels like, versus what she's going to do with this one is a very scientific, repeatable process. She has data points by GPS all around the lake. So the next time we have her, hopefully, come in to do it, or she's going to give us the data so we could have another company do it, which would, Solitude's the only game out there that I found. We can repeat it and we will have very scientific data on where the different types of plants are. And this will be very helpful to our weed watchers as well, because our volunteer weed watchers will know exactly what kind of plants are where, and if they see something different than that, then they can go, oh, what's this, and get someone else involved. So I think we have a pretty good plan, but we do have more money, so we could increase the time from 5 years down to every 2 or 3 years if we wanted to.
These are in shallow waters?
Anywhere up to 20 feet. Yeah. Yeah, so if you can look at this later, she'll be over at the table during the barbecue, but you'll notice that the data points are almost the whole lake. The deepest spot in the lake is 32 feet. So you'll notice that the only place that there aren't dots is in the very middle of the lake where it's over 20 feet. All right, any other questions?
If you guys have any questions about cyanobacteria and algae, I can assist with answering those questions as well. I know a little bit about that. So please come see me if you have any questions. Okay. Show me pictures. I love pictures. You have a question?
Oh, no,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Amanda. Yeah, so go over and visit her. She actually has some samples of native plants that some of them are on our lake, but she also has milfoil over there. So if you want to see what invasive milfoil looks like, she has one of those. If you ever see something that you think might be an invasive, or you're not sure it's something new that you see on your beachfront, I regularly go out. People have contacted me or the info at slahamstead.org address and say, hey, I think this might be something, and I'll go and check it out. And will take samples of it. Usually what I do is bring them home, put them in my sink in the water so they spread back out again. I can usually analyze and try to figure out what it is, but if it's something that I don't know, can't quite tell what it looks like, then I get in touch with Amy Smagula from NHDES, and she's very responsive. I usually get a response same day saying, yep, you're right, that's that. And, the ones that I don't know, she'll tell me what they are. And so far, we've never had an invasive. But usually I get at least 2 a year where I'll go to people's waterfront and go collect samples to see what it is. And all of our weed watchers also have, they have materials on this that, have pictures of all the different plants that are common to this area, and also the ones that are invasive.